Good day, everyone. How are you? Welcome to Avocet Communications Marketers IV. We are so excited to have you join us today. We've got some incredible information that we're going to share with you about the importance of differentiation through a national research program that we completed recently. I'd like to introduce everyone that you're going to be interacting with today. First off, my name is Lori Jones, and I'm President and CEO of Avocet Communications. We've got Dave Smith with us, who is our Director of Client Relations, and of course, Susan Baier, who is our go-to everything on research. So we're excited to share these great details with you today and talk more about Marketers IV.
Well, we are excited, and it all stems around the opportunity for us to be both literal and practical with Marketers IV. So on the surface, it is inspiration and vision, or inspired vision. It's also an opportunity for every marketer to get that shot in the arm that they need for practical application, inspired events and backgrounds that we can share that help you understand best practices. And it lends itself to other learnings that will help you with your clients and your brands.
So we started this series, as you know, as some of you might know, we've got a podcast in the market by the name of Integrate and Ignite Marketing Podcast. We're up to about 450 sessions. We get quite a few questions regarding research and differentiation and segmentation, a lot of what we've been covering during Marketers IV. So we decided to take that podcast one step further and allow an opportunity for us to dive into detail a little bit more on some of these areas that we get questions on quite often. So with that said, we're going to move right into efforts to differentiate, which again is a part of this very detailed research program that we conducted. And differentiation for our agency and really the ethos of what we really focus on is taking that sea of sameness, which most brands fit within, and moving brands to a point of differentiation so that they can stand out among the crowd of brands that we compete with day in and day out. And 27% of the respondents say that they've become more aggressive in their marketings to differentiate, and interestingly, in recent times. So in the last couple of years, they've become far more aggressive than in years past. And about 31% of these individuals, these CMOs, these marketing titles is who we talk to, say that they've done it to some extent. So now I'd like to go ahead and pass it over to Susan, who's going to dive into these marketer segments that we talk to.
Thanks, Lori. You know, if you've watched our previous webinars in this series, you've seen this chart before. Our research with marketing leaders, CEOs, decision makers, identified three really different types of folks in that space. Accomplished marketers. These are the marketers we all hope we can be someday. They really feel like their organizations have this nailed. They are analyzing the results of their efforts. They are strategic. They are prioritizing marketing, and it's working very well for them. The anxious strugglers, which are our largest group, 40%, are really having a tough time. They feel like their organization hasn't got this dialed in very well, isn't doing the kind of marketing that it should be doing, and is sort of hard to move in that direction. So they're not seeing the benefits of their marketing like the accomplished marketers are. And the strategy believers at 31% have the right idea. They're just not there yet. So they are using strategy and research to become accomplished marketers, but they're still struggling with some of the same kinds of things that anxious strugglers are. So, you know, when we start talking about differentiation and look at this spectrum, one thing really stands out, which is the characteristics of those accomplished marketers. You know, look at this chart this is the percentage of folks in each segment that said their organization is very good or excellent at reaching ideal prospects, engaging with ideal prospects, converting ideal prospects into customers, and retaining existing customers. And you could see the blue bars there. That's where we all want to be, right? This is the core of the job, is using our marketing to reach, engage, convert prospects and then keep them as clients. So the accomplished are really a step ahead of everybody else in the survey with respect to that. The other thing we see about the accomplished is that they are far more confident to say that they are well positioned to achieve their goals. So where everybody else is sort of I don't think we're going to get there, or I hope we'll get there, the overwhelming majority of accomplished feel very strongly that their organization is on track to achieve the goals that they're setting for themselves. And so if we look at both of those things and go, wow, I want to do that, the question is, why are they doing so much better, Lori?
A lot of it has to do with the mindset, right? And we're, of course, going to talk about some specifics here in just a second. But I think when you value differentiation as a core tenet to your marketing program, to your sales approach, whatever it might be, it could be the messaging, all sorts of different elements of that. That is when ultimately brands are able to really leapfrog their competition. And it's not just direct competition, it's indirect as well. Quite often at Avocet, we talk about the fact of this. Are we challenging someone, or are we challenging something? I'll give you a great example. We had a client years ago that we got on Shark Tank, and they have a product that actually dries out wet phones. And we were able to get them into 600 Staples stores throughout the US, where someone, if they drop their phone in a toilet, they could bring the phone to Staples and get it dried out. The biggest competition was rice, which was a misnomer. Rice does not dry out the phone better. It just actually allows the person to stay away from it, which it dries naturally. So differentiation in this situation was key. We needed to dispel a myth around what really would dry a phone versus not. And those sort of approaches, when it comes to standing out in a crowd, are really important. One of our seemingly competitors could have been, just going and buying a new phone too. So think about really this challenging someone or something when you're developing your differentiation so that you can really stand out in that sea of sameness.
And one of the things that we saw in this data is that these accomplished marketers don't look any different from other organizations. They don't have bigger budgets. They don't have more revenue than anybody else. So it's achievable for everyone. But like you said, there is a mindset shift with these folks. So the accomplished marketers say their organization better understands the needs of their prospects, ideal prospects. 76% of them rate their organization as very good or excellent on this point. And they better understand their competitors. 83% strongly agree that they have a good understanding of their competitors. So they have some context around which to differentiate. They know what their ideal prospects want, and they know what they're up against from a competitive standpoint. In addition, to your point about mindset, they are more focused on differentiating from competitors. These respondents overwhelmingly say they would rate their organization very highly with respect to how strongly they believe in taking a differentiated position and really having an ownable point of difference from the competition. So not only do they have that mindset, but they are more likely to be acting on it. These folks are more likely to be using that differentiated position in their marketing, more likely to strongly differentiate in their marketing efforts. 71% of them rate their organization very good or excellent. So they not only have in their own heads a clear understanding of what their differentiation is, but they're actually putting it into their marketing. And then to reflect on a point you made earlier, Lori, yes, they are becoming more aggressive about differentiating recently, and the accomplished marketers far more than anyone else. So they sort of have this triple whammy, right? They've got the context, they're using it in their marketing, and they're amping up talking about their point of differentiation recently. So if you're competing against somebody like that, it can be hard to win. They're really firing on all cylinders, I think, here, Lori.
It really can. And I think a key point here is we as marketers should not be afraid of differentiation. There's all sorts of reasons why we don't differentiate. One of those could be, the leader of the pack. It's an engineering company and they feel very, very comfortable, being a part of the pack. That's all we need. And shifting those mindsets, I believe, is the job of the marketer. If the engineering firm, for instance, has hired a marketing team, then that they need to be able to listen. So there's some information for those of you who might be, interacting with a senior leader that just says we want to do it the same way, and you can then have some some strength to go back and say, if you really want us to meet our growth goals, we feel that differentiation is key. We hear about this from marketers constantly. The other thing I might add here is with some of the smaller brands that are tuning in today, the CEO or CTO might be running the marketing right now. And guess what? This is all that they know, is talking about what they do and how they do it. So differentiation is not going to be something that they fully embrace or understand at this stage. We're going to get into some tools later on that you can utilize to help yourself with those discussions and learn to differentiate on the fly. But those are, I think, a couple key points that we marketers really need to be able to understand and share downstream.
Absolutely. And Lori, I think what we've seen over the years, especially with accomplished marketers, is that different is sometimes better than better. Standing out, whether you're a large company or small, what Susan alluded to earlier is that revenue and budget do not necessarily dictate the outcomes of shortening that buyer's journey. It's creating a story. It's learning about the whys and those strategic levers, whether they be price or how you're positioned in the market, as Lori alluded to, the engineering company, how you sound, where you're marketing and whom you're speaking to. The more opportunities that you have to be different helps that buyer come to the table with an already preconceived notion about whether or not it's a good deal, that it's for them, and how they can potentially, meet the expectations that they have for either the product or the service that you're selling. And in the course of doing that, shortening that buyer journey also saves on budget. It economizes the opportunity that you as a brand or you as an agency leading that brand down the path can get to the final outcome, which is selling more product more often and hopefully for more money. Along with those insights are best practices. So although playing the game where different is better than better, there are best practices that help increase the opportunities to make that final sale.
And one of those best practices is a tool that we deploy at Avocet we just call it a POD grid, which stands for point of parities versus point of difference. And what we find, again, is that most brands are comfortable hanging their hat on points of parity. So we've got a tool, an example here that we're illustrating just to make you guys all hungry or like take away that bad breath right now, but Mentos, Clorets, and Halls. And what we've done here is create a point of parity and point of difference grid so that you can see the difference. So points of parity in this situation, all of these products are mint candy. They all have, packaging size varies. They're all a similar size, similar price points, and guess what? They all taste fresh. Those are points of parity. If you're an engineering firm, a point of parity might be excellent customer service. You're always going to do what the customer asks, or the customer is always first, or that you're open from 9 to 5 each day, or that you're always going to get back to everyone in 24 hours, or that you guarantee the quality of everything that you produce. Those are all table stakes. That's what it takes for you to even get to the point of consideration. So when you utilize that as a forte to your messaging, guess what? You don't stand out. You fit within that sea of sameness. And then we just talked about the sales funnel and shortening the sales process. All you're doing at that point is elongating it and really not positioning yourself for success. So what we like to do is really take a look at this, by the way, and compare all of your competitors So build a grid similar to that you see here, study the customer or the competitor rather, find out what they're doing day in and day out, and then find a unique way that you can create a point of difference. With Mentos, they're colorful, they've got a variety of colors, they've got a unique shape, they're a little bit round instead of square or rectangular. Those tiny little points of difference can really make a big difference in how you go to market with either messaging or product specifics to really differentiate yourself and again, push yourself out of that sea of sameness. So you've got a POD grid that you've established. And then what we like to do as a brand is take a look at a tool that we developed about 30 years ago that we refer to as range of acceptability. So within your industry, how far do you want to move your messaging and your creative, your product, itself? Do you want to be boring, which is typically a 1, 2, or 3 on this range of acceptability, or do you really want to move it to the right-hand side, which is where you can stand out from the crowd? Sea of sameness happens between 1 and 5. There's not anything that you're going to do by pushing out an ad that looks like everyone else or a message to really help you move the product along the buyer's journey. When you take a more brave approach within the context of how your customers buy, like we don't want to do something that's totally different for your product line that might be acceptable for a product line that has nothing to do with it. So you want to, again, be within the acceptability of the buyer mindset. When you move yourself to the right-hand side of this grid here from an execution standpoint, that is where you really do differentiate. We had a client years ago, US Electronics, and they provided remote controls to every cable company in the United States. And we developed a print ad that was not, a pretty picture of the remote and didn't have all the engineering specs on it. We did a lot of market research. We looked at the POD rather, and learned that if we had an instantaneous customizable remote that could be delivered within 4 weeks, we knew that we could differentiate and get more brands to buy from us. So we developed an ad that tied into the Whopper, have it your way anyway. And the first time that ad hit, again, you're thumbing through a publication and you see wonderful products, by the way, all sorts of engineering speak. And then you see this ad with US Electronics, a $10 million contract from Motorola with that single ad. That's how you differentiate and really impact top line revenue for your company.
Absolutely. There's so many different opportunities for you to tap into both today's presentation and those in the past, as well as those going forward. You can visit avocet.com/IV and download the executive summary that Susan touched on just a little bit today. You can view all of the full visualization of the research and graphs and insights and notes. You could watch previous webinars. And then you could also tune into our Integrate and Ignite podcast. Either way, there's opportunities for you to get that shot in the arm of inspired vision and provide both you, your team, and maybe even your customers as well, an opportunity to grow. So we look forward to seeing you more as we progress in Marketers IV.
We hope that we inspired all of you today. Here is some information on how you can contact Dave or myself. Just our first names and then the email address, avocetcommunications.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, and go differentiate.